What's going on, my creative collective? Welcome to lesson number 33, Condensation on the Looking Glass. So this lesson is about understanding the different ways that we can see situations, right? Just a little reminder, we don't have to take like massive leaps, although many of us are very good at jumping to the wrong conclusion in a single bound. So this lesson is about just a tiny perspective shift, right? Just a little one. That's all we need is just that little bit of space. We need that little bit of space, a little bit of grace to give ourselves. That's it. So this lesson draws from A Course in Miracles about regarding knowing that there's multiple ways of seeing things. There's another way of looking at this, right? What I love about this lesson is that it doesn't imply, and even this creative spark expression of it that you'll see at the end of this video, it really sinks into the fact that there's no right way to see things. There are multiple ways happening all the time. Think about how it's felt when you've forgiven someone for something. The situation hasn't fundamentally changed. You have in response to what happened. The energy of that situation has stayed the same, but something has shifted in you, which then sends a ripple out, energetically speaking, that changes things so that your energy is responding in a separate way. That starts up here, though, where you start to see it differently. And this is one of the building blocks and foundations of forgiveness. This is where we start to understand how this works at the level of the mind, where we can start to separate ego, identity, and attachments from how they are expressing themselves through us and within us, right? So this is about entertaining the idea, number one, that the first thought that we have about something it's not about being right or wrong, but that it may not be the one that's in our best good, right? It may not be the one that's in our best good. So when we think about it in those terms, we're not making ourselves or others incorrect. That's not what this is about. There is no right way or one way, right? Antidotes to white supremacy culture. There is no one way that is more right than the other. There are multitudes. There are multiplicities. That's what multidimensionality is, right? So we're stepping into this multidimensionality, and when we get into that place, we can see, it's through your energy center, you see these different possibilities for situations, right? Because usually we pick the one that aligns with the energy and frequency that we're vibrating at most often. You can get a good read on where your energy is at based on how you feel and think about something, the first thought that you have about it, right? When you reach a four-way stop, this is my, who do you want to be when this happens? But when you reach a four-way stop, an all-way stop, and everyone gets there at the same time, how do you feel when you go last? How do you feel when people around you who you think you came there before them and then you try to go? How do you feel in those situations when you're in a rush? When you're hurrying? Those are the everyday places where these things will pop up, and they like pop up like little whack-a-moles, and you see them, right? You see them and you're like, oh, and you don't necessarily need to smack them down, but you get to see where they're popping up, right? That's a good example that I use for myself because I spend about an hour commuting each way every day. That's a great time and place that I see it. So I recommend it to others in that instance, thinking about it this way. How do you feel? What's the first thought that you have if a bus drives past you? And you're at a stop and very clearly visible right at the bus stop, and the bus drives right past you. Another one's coming, but oh, is it annoying? Oh, is it annoying, right? I've had that happen to me too. So this is where we begin to see there are multiple explanations for things happening around us. I'm not talking necessarily about scientific stuff, though that is the cool part about this too, because there's so much science. So many things are happening at the same time. So many cellular processes happening all around us. It can be very loud for me sometimes, but this is really getting to the point of seeing that our energy is resonating at the first place we go to. This isn't to judge yourself. Don't jump to judging yourself at all either, because that's not the point of this at all. That's not the point. The point is to see it, to meet it and embrace ourselves, because it hasn't been in our highest good to respond from that place, because it's not really responding, it's reacting. And what we want to get to is a place of responding, where we are seeing what's happening and we are intentionally choosing thoughts that align with where we want to be vibrating at. Not only that, but where we want to go and what kind of life we want to have. Because a lot of us still, we do operate with a certain intentionality in some spaces, right? We do this at work with performance evaluations. That tends to bookend things for us, in a way that neatly packages a year and presents a specific intentionality. We do this, when we have goals, or if we have, fitness aspirations, that kind of thing. We do this often. There's a specific intentionality, but there's also an unconscious aspect of this that operates in our world profoundly. We are largely unconscious in the way that we respond to things. So how do you recognize that you might want another way, that you might want to wipe the condensation off of the looking glass, right? How do you know that? Well, if you feel out of balance with what's happening and the reasons that you come to, or the conclusions that you come to, if they feel bad and they disconnect you from others, and you're starting to become more aware of this, it's probably a good sign that you might be wanting something different, right? When we bring an awareness to this is also, it's again jumping to the wrong conclusions, and not because there's a right, wrong binary, but because it's not what someone meant. This is about other people's intentions too, which we can really only ever get an idea of in the absence of meaningful communication about it, right? We can only really ever get those bits and pieces. When we learn that someone didn't mean something, even though we built up this story in our head about what they mean and who they are and all of this, and we bring the past forward to the present moment. We bring the stories forward to the present moment about what it is that they mean for us. Not everything's going to be, sunshine and roses. It's not the nature of existence. You didn't come here to experience pain and pain as suffering. You came here to experience life. And sometimes that includes things that don't always feel great. Again, does it mean suffering and pain? Like pain and suffering, the way that they come together? No, I do not believe that. What I do believe, though, is that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just have to take a look at things here and pull back long enough to ask yourself, is this really what's happening here? What are some of the other options to seeing this? How else can we see this? Which brings us to the creative spark for today. The point of this exercise is to sit with the rhizomatic, to sit and meditate on and think with the rhizomatic nature of our existence. We exist in an interconnected web, whether we choose to believe it or not, right? We're connected to everyone around us. And it's not just some let's hold hands and sing songs. Yes. No, it's not about that either. At a very fundamental level, we're connected. I mean, that is fun sometimes. I'm not going to lie. Come on. But this is about a deeper, sinking deeper into this. It's a deeper meaning that's at work here. Because when we come to understand that there are there's a multiplicity of reasons why something could be happening, we entertain the possibility that we don't know, and it detaches the ego response, the ego's need for certainty, right? That rush to certainty. I know what this means. I know what they meant, and I know who they are. Do we? Do we always? Because someone could have had a life-changing awakening or experience earlier that day. Someone could have had something massive shift in them. So the person that you knew is no longer there in the same way that you knew them. And just the same as you change as well in those interactions, you change. So the person that you were in that interaction even is no longer in existence, because something in you has fundamentally shifted as well. So it's not just about responding to and giving other people the benefit of the doubt here. This is giving you the freedom to know your own creative power, because you're not limiting yourself. You're not limiting yourself in that moment either. You're allowing energy to flow through you too, because you're in recognition of your eternal, timeless self. You're in recognition of the part of you that goes beyond this present moment, and that exists before, and that will exist after, and that exists in between, but that exists in hundreds of thousands of different iterations therein based on the choices that you make. Right? Back to this point, this kind of brings us to our creative spark. First and foremost, think about with me just for a second, something that happened that upset you or frustrated you, where you kind of had to intuit what someone meant. You had to intuit a meaning, or you made a meaning without even intuiting. It wasn't a conscious process. You made a meaning by reading into something or knowing someone without them really telling you. And this can be something that shifted later, like, oh, I was wrong about that. Okay, so even that is okay. And you don't have to announce it to anybody. You don't have to tell anyone you're doing this. So just sit with that for a second. Think of that time, that thought, that situation, okay? And then make a list of 15 15, it's important that you stretch this. I was going to say 20, so do 20 if you want. But think of 15 other and alternative explanations as to why that thing happened with that person. And I say with a person because it's important for this to be placed in the context of how we relate to others. Because I think that it ends up being a great mirror and shows us how we can interact in ways that can be in service to our highest healing in our heart space, and that can also mirror things to us that allows us to see much more clearly, not just ourselves, but also the other person too, right? That help us to stay inside integrity with ourselves. Why did someone, break a lunch date? I don't know. I feel like that's common. People do that a lot. It's like, what was someone's reason for that? Maybe they were running late. Maybe they felt overwhelmed. Maybe they had too much on their plate. They could have genuinely forgotten, but they might have forgotten because they were overwhelmed. Then they might have forgotten too because they had so much on their mind because they're not telling you about something going on in their lives. We're not trying to attach to any of these things either. So as you're doing this, just write out the explanations in a very neutral way. Don't attach emotion to it because once you're done the list, take a look at these different explanations and then see how they resonate within you, right? See how they resonate within you, because some of your alternative explanations will evoke like, oh, I feel bad for them. Some other ones will be like, oh, that's not a good excuse at all. And it's your responses that you're focusing on as well, because this is where the mirror in our relationships comes in, right? This is where that comes in for us, and how that can be an evolution for our growth while we equally make space for others by keeping our heart open, by being inside integrity within ourselves and honest with ourselves as well about the fact that it's not what other people are doing. It's the meaning that we're making, right? And it is the understanding that there are multiple ways of seeing a situation, which it's not about putting you in some kind of control and in a driver's seat where you're like, now I'm in control and I get to control the outcome. Not like that at all. This is about being able to surrender and having a process that helps to birth that surrender within you in the present moment for you, so that you can, in the moments where you're most charged, pull back and say, okay, I'm recognizing that I'm having a significant response to this, but what are the other options available? What are the other ideas that I could have about this? And am I having this one idea because of me? Usually the case. Am I having this one idea because of me? Or am I flexible enough in my energy and perspective to know that right now, based on this reaction and response, I need to do something to tend to my energy before I even think about responding to this situation? It's also helping us to tend to our own energy so that we're not giving it away, like it's not pouring out of us, It's not pouring out of us like a waterfall, because that's a way we also give away our own power. And it's not that we're giving away our own power and people are taking it from us. It's nothing like that, right? It's not like that at all. We give it away because we're not considering the way that these things are mirroring important information about our own process and about our own evolution and awakening internally, right? So we can get caught up in this, this response and reactions, and without really considering how we're meant to take that information in, right? It's not always easy, right? This is something that I've had to do a lot over the years based on things that have happened to me. And in relationships, this can be even more difficult because we can associate a sense of vulnerability and whether someone loves you as whether all of the things that you believe about yourself are true or not, right? And that's where it can be really codependent, and that's where codependence can slip in without really us noticing it, So we can get really sensitive with this, because if we recognize in that moment that there is a little bit of that charge to something, to a situation, and we recognize that we're triggered, we have to do the work to understand if that trigger is the result of a little bit of that codependent toxicity that we're working through or getting out of our system. Or, culturally speaking too, just as a collective, we're in a way trained to respond that way. And a lot of pop culture makes it very acceptable to respond that way. That is changing gradually, thankfully, based on a lot of people say pejoratively that it's like insta therapy. And it is in a way, but it's also shifting the collective tide towards something that's a little bit more healthy and aware of and lending a vocabulary to detaching from these codependent behaviors. So with that being said, this helps us to see where we might be getting hooked, or where we might be saying to someone, oh, is that a hook? Sure, you can put that right here, right? So we get to see where that can be taking place more. So that is your creative spark, and this is lesson 33, condensation on the looking glass. If this was helpful, I give it a like and feel free to subscribe. I am so grateful, first and foremost, though, beyond the likes and subscribes. Thank you for watching and for spending time on this channel and for your eyes and your time. I know I really appreciate it, and I'm very, very grateful. So thank you for that. And if this is where we part, though, my friends, I hope that wherever this finds you on the time-space continuum, morning, afternoon, or night, that it finds you very well and wrapped up in so much love. Take care, everyone.